Hi everyone. In this tutorial, we're adding an equipment menu to our RPG framework, allowing players to equip weapons they've collected throughout the game. Previously, we built a weapon system that lets the player independently switch weapons for both hands. In the last two tutorials, we also created an inventory system. Now, we'll connect these systems to give the player full control over weapon swapping in-game. By the end, you'll have a fully functional equipment system that enhances both gameplay and immersion. Let's get started. First, open Visual Studio and find RPG Weapon Header file. Open it. This class inherits from actor. We should reparent it to inherit from spawnable item class that we created in one of the previous tutorial. Go back to Unreal Editor and compile it. After compile is done, go to Blueprints folder and open Weapon Base Blueprint. Here you should be able to see item info struct. I would like to create inventory system that will not allow player to stack same weapons in the inventory. To achieve this, I'm going to set max count in inventory to 1. Additionally, I'm creating new gameplay tag that will help us classify weapons. Also, I will add non-expandable tag that will ensure weapons are not removed from the inventory when function use item is called. Now add sphere collision to default scene route. For radius, enter 150. Also, make sure to set the sphere that character cannot step on it. Now find sword actor and drag it to the world map. This interaction area looks big, so I'm going to lower sphere radius to 100. Now player will be able to pick up sword when enters its radius. However, there is one problem with this approach. If player is close enough to the enemy sword, he can pick it up and leave enemy unarmed, which will produce this runtime errors when enemy tries to attack. Let's solve this issue. Go to the Visual Studio. As you remember from previous tutorials, spawnable item implements interactable interface that allows player to interact with it. Here we will add new function that will control if player can interact with an object. As before, we will use Blueprint native event specifier to allow implementing this function in blueprints. Additionally, in spawnable item class we will create default implementation for allow interaction function. In this implementation we should simply return true. Also, make sure to include this check in default interact implementation to ensure that interaction is blocked when allow interaction returns false. Now go back to Unreal Editor and compile. After compile is done, open Interaction Blueprint component. Find on component Begin Overlap event. Here we need to call allow interaction function before we add actor to the interactable actors in range array. Now go to the weapon base blueprint. You should be able to see allow interaction function that comes from interactable item interface. Implement it. We need to allow interaction only if weapon is not equipped. To achieve this, I'm going to utilize gameplay tags that we have on RPG item struct. For this purpose, I'm going to create new tag, inventory, equipped. Now we need to add this tag when weapon is equipped. To do this, open character base. Find equip weapons function. We should update weapon info by adding equip tag right after weapon actor is spawned. If you receive this error when trying to compile character base, save your work and restart Unreal Editor. Looks like editor was confused after last compile process. Now, when editor is restarted, you can compile character base and continue. As you can see, we cannot disarm enemy right now. Let's make some refactoring and equip weapons function. First, I would like to move get weapon socket name to weapon base blueprint. Since it is all about weapon sockets, it should be placed in weapon blueprint. Copy it and paste in weapon base. Also, I'm going to refactor it to return both armed and unarmed slots depending on his armed input parameter. Now go back to character base. We should replace this nodes with new function from weapon blueprint. Also, I'm going to add this code to ensure that weapon actors are spawned close to the character. This will be needed for world partitioning. Additionally, we should destroy all equipped weapons at the beginning of this function. This will make it usable for changing weapons in-game. At the end, you can search for all the places where getWeaponSocketName function is used. We should replace it with call to the same function but from weapon blueprint. Then remove old function from character base since we don't need it. Right now I'm going to configure item info for my weapon actors. I have created some images that I will use as weapon icons using Deep AI. Now, drag some weapons to the world map to test interaction. As you can see, interaction with weapon actors should work like for other props. Now let's move to the equipment menu. First, we are going to create inventory pawn that will be used in equipment menu to visualize player and equipped items. Go to the inventory folder and create new blueprint actor. Name it BP Inventory Pawn. First, make sure to enable tick when game is paused. Then add skeletal mesh component. Select Fortnite Mannequin for skeletal mesh asset. Change animation mode to animation asset. For animation to play, select neutral stand idle animation sequence. Now open event graph. Delete tick and begin overlap events since we don't need them. Let's start with begin play implementation. First we need to cast owner to player blueprint and save it to a new variable for later. Then we need to check if our player has child skeletal mesh. As you may remember, we added this mesh to support in-game animation retargeting between Fortnite skeleton and custom skeletal meshes. If there is child mesh, we need to add one to the inventory pawn too. Additionally, we need to copy some skeletal mesh properties from the player mesh. For that purpose, I'm going to create separate function. Also, we need to attach new skeletal mesh to the existing one. At the end, we should hide parent mesh. Since I have selected this approach with creating separate inventory pawn, we will need to provide method for attaching weapons to it. Similar like we have in character base. Create new function. Name it, equip weapons. You can copy implementation from character base. We need all nodes up to the 1 for attaching weapon to the socket. Paste it to the equip weapons function in inventory pawn. We will need to fix some values. First, create new variable from equipped weapons map. Also, we need to get weapon references from the player variable. We can delete this nodes for updating gameplay tags on the weapon. Also, remove his armed variable from here. In inventory pawn, we don't have get skeletal mesh function, but we need it. Let's create it. Implementation will be different than in player blueprint. Here we need to check if skeletal mesh variable is valid and return appropriate mesh reference based on that value. At the end, we should spawn add weapon actor to the equipped weapons map. Now go back to the event graph. Add call to the equip weapons function we have created. Now, we should display our inventory pawn on game menu. To do this, we can use scene capture component 2D. Add it to the actor. Set camera rotation and position like on the video. Make sure to enable tick when game is paused. Go back to Inventory folder. Create new render target. Name it RT, Inventory Pawn. Select this render target as texture target on the scene capture component. This will ensure that all captions are saved to the render target we can use as image on the UI. Change capture source to use show only list. This will allow us to configure what components should be captured. To achieve this, go back to the event graph. Use show only actor components function and pass reference to self. Additionally, we need to call this function for each weapon actor we are adding to the inventory pawn. Let's create equipment menu now. Go to the Inventory UI folder. Duplicate Inventory menu widget blueprint. Remove this 3-item grid widgets. For now, I will add one vertical box and image in it. Configure alignment and size like on the video. For image source, we should select inventory pawn render target. One we have set as target for scene capture component and inventory pawn. Additionally, we should increase its resolution since default one is too small. Now we need to spawn inventory pawn when equipment menu is opened. To do this, we should use inventory actor component. Open it. Create new function. Name it spawn inventory pawn. Here we just need to spawn inventory pawn. For the location, we should use component owner location, but I'm going to increase location value on Z-axis. This will ensure that inventory pawn is spawned above player pawn at some high point. At the end, promote this spawned actor to new variable. Additionally, create one more function. Name it destroy inventory pawn. Here we need to simply destroy inventory pawn if it exists. Now go back to equipment menu widget. Open event graph. Delete all existing events. We will use event onInitialized to call spawn inventory pawn using inventory component. Also, make sure to call destroy inventory pawn function on destruct event. This will ensure that we are removing inventory pawn from the level when menu is closed. At the end, Go to the Game Menu Widget blueprint and replace Change Equipment text with Equipment Menu Widget. Let's test this now. When we open Menu, we should be able to see Inventory Pawn, but there is something wrong here. We can see only Sky. Additionally, when you stop playing, you may receive this error about accessing some null reference. This error happens because the struct event can be called multiple times, as description says. And sometimes getPlayerPawn will return null pointer. To prevent this, we can use doOnce node. To solve problem with not showing Inventory Pawn, we need to go back to Inventory Pawn blueprint. Problem is at the start of Begin Play event. Here we should not use getOwner function. Instead, we should use getPlayerPawn. As you can see, now we are able to see Inventory Pawn, but it is all black. Let's fix this and remove Sky from the background. And again, I have received this error about bad reference in Equipment Menu, regardless of doOnce function I have added. I'll try to fix this by adding validation check before player pawn reference is used. To remove all background and show only Inventory Pawn, we can create new material from Render Target Asset. Open Material. Change Material Domain to User Interface. Change Blend Mode to Masked. Connect RGB pin to Final Color. Use 1- function with alpha texture channel and connect the output to the opacity mask. This will eliminate background that is stored in alpha channel. Go to the Equipment menu and select this material as image source. Let's test it now. As you can see, background is removed and only Inventory Pawn with equipped weapons is visible. Now, let's duplicate Inventory Item widget. Rename it to Equipment Slot Button. Delete this Count Text widget. Also, click on the size box and lower vertical size to 100. Additionally, we need to do some changes in the event graph. First, remove Count Text widget from all places it is used. Now add new variable. Name it Equipment Slot. for type select weapon slot enum. Create new function. Name it getItem. We will use this function to get item equipped in weapon slot this widget points to. To avoid expensive casting to player blueprint, we will use Warrior Interface. Go to Warrior Interface and define new function. Name it Get Weapons. Add output variable of type map. For key select weapon slot, for value select weapon base object reference. Now go to the character base and implement this interface. Go back to Equipment Slot button. Open GetItem function. Call GetWeapons function we have just created. Now when we have all weapons that is equipped on our player, we can search for weapon and slot that is configured in our widget. Also, I'm going to change type of the item variable to RPG item struct. Then set it using item info from the equipped weapon reference. Additionally, set is empty variable based on the result of find item node. Now go back to the event graph. Here we will have some errors because we changed type of the item variable. Let's fix the errors. Instead of event pre-construct, we will use event onInitialized. Make sure to add call to the function getItem before all other nodes. I'm going to delete all the code for handling hover button events. I will not create pop-up that appears when you hover this button. Also, I'm going to delete pop-up and item index variables since we don't need them in this blueprint. Now go to the Equipment menu widget. Add 2 vertical boxes left and right to the vertical box where we placed character image. Add 2 equipment slot buttons like on the video. Set equipment slot for each. One should point to right hand slot, another to left hand. Let's try this now. As you can see, buttons are showing correct weapon info. My player has sword in right and shield in left hand. Now let's create equipment grid. Go to the Inventory UI folder. Duplicate items grid widget. Rename it to Equipment Grid. Open Event Graph. You can delete Construct Event since we will not use it. Now open Populate Grid function. Here we need to add one more check to filter out items that are currently equipped. To do this, we can simply validate if item doesn't have Inventory Equipped tag on it. Now go back to Equipment menu. Add Widget Switcher to the Canvas panel and configure it like on video. Rename Widget Switcher to Tabs and make it variable. Also, rename this vertical box to Main and make it variable. Now duplicate Main Widget and rename it to Equipment Selection. Reorder existing elements inside Equipment Selection like on the video. Now add equipment grid to the second vertical box. You can change label text, but we will make it dynamic later. Be sure to select Weapon Tag in Item Tags container. Now click on Main tab and rename equipment slot buttons. Use right-hand slot and left-hand slot as variable names. Now go to the Equipment Slot Button widget. Create new event dispatcher. Name it, on Gear button click. Configure it to be called when item button is clicked. Also, add one equipment slot parameter to this dispatcher. Now go back to Equipment menu and bind New Custom Event on right-hand slot button clicked event. On this event, we need to set Equipment Selection as Active tab. Also, we should pass Equipment Slot to the back button and update it. To make update possible, I'm going to add one custom event in Equipment Slot Button widget. This event will call Same Node Sequence like event on initialized. Now go back to design mode and rename equipment grid to items grid and make it variable. Go back to event graph and set items grid title using equipment slot input. Now bind on click event for left-hand slot button to the same function. Let's see how this will work. As you may notice, Items Grid on Equipment Selection tab is populated with all weapons from inventory. One thing we forgot is to bind event when back button is clicked. Let's do this now. Go to Equipment menu and create new event. Name it back to Main tab. Here we simply need to set main as active tab using Widget switcher. Also, make sure to bind this event for back button click inside event on initialized. Now back button should return you to the main tab of Equipment menu. Now go to the Inventory UI folder and duplicate Inventory Item widget. Rename it to Equipment Item. Remove Count text box. Go to the event graph and delete all references to the Count text box. Here I would like to toggle different pop-up than one we have for the common inventory items. So I'm going to duplicate item pop-up widget. For now I'm going to change only few labels, but later this can be modified to show other weapon-specific things like damage amount, special effects, condition. Go to the Equipment Item widget and change Pop-up variable type to the Equipment Pop-up. Now go to Equipment Grid. Find places where we are creating inventory item widgets and replace class reference with reference to Equipment Item widget. You should do this on 2 places. Now, when you open Equipment Selection menu, you should see New Equipment widgets. Finally, it's time to implement functionality for changing weapons from the Equipment menu. This can be achieved on multiple ways, but I would like to show you how to efficiently utilize function use item for this purpose. First, we will need to do small adjustments to our C++ code. Open Visual Studio Project. Find Interactable Interface Header. Add one input parameter of type map to the function use item. For key and value types, use string. Name it options. This parameter will allow us to receive unstructured data that we can use during execution. Since this function is intended to be implemented by different kind of blueprint, this represents a powerful way for sending custom parameters. Also, we need to add same parameter to function use item in RPG inventory component. Now go back to Unreal Editor and compile. After compile is done, open Inventory Actor component. You should see this error for function use item. Just refresh this node and you will see options map we just added. Connect it with options pin from this event. One more place where you will need to refresh node is this one where we handle user input. Now we need to send in some options. I'm going to use same logic like for item index. Make new variable and create function for setting it. Now go to the weapon base. Implement function use item. Here we need to change weapon class that is equipped in some socket on the owner of this weapon. To avoid unnecessary and expensive casting, I'm going to define new function for setting weapon slot and warrior interface. Now go back to weapon base and call this function from outer object. Now the problem is how we can figure out in which slot this weapon should be equipped. This is where options parameter will help. First, create new function. Name it, get slot from options. Add options as an input parameter. We will search for weapon slot key in options map to find out what is the slot we should equip weapon to. Add two output parameters. One Boolean parameter that will indicate that we found weapon slot, another one that will return weapon slot value. When we didn't find weapon slot key in the options map, we should simply return false output. But when there is value associated with weapon slot key, we need to convert it to weapon slot enum. It is possible to do this in blueprints, but I prefer to use C++ for this things. It is more performant and cleaner to put it in C++. Go to Visual Studio and find helper functions header. Define new function. Name it string to weapon slot. It should return weapon slot enum from provided string value parameter. Also, it should return one Boolean parameter indicating that value is successfully found in weapon slot enum. For implementing this function in blueprints, you will need a lot of nodes. Additionally, you will need to compare string value with each enum value converted to string. That will require updating this function every time you add new value in weapon slot enum. However, in C++, this implementation takes just a few lines of code. Also, it is generic, so there is no need for updating it when you add new weapon slots. Now use this new function in weapon-based blueprint. Go back to Event Graph. Find Event Use Item. Call getSlot from Options function to extract weapon slot and pass it to the Set Weapon Slot function. Additionally, you can make this function pure. At the end, we should destroy this actor. We are doing this since equip weapons function in character base will spawn weapon actor based on class reference we set. Maybe this is not the best way since we are spawning same actor 2 times in short time, but for now I don't see some performance problems since this actors are not heavy for spawning. Also, changing weapons is not something that will happen every second in game. Now we need to pass in weapon slot to this function. The best place to do that is inside equipment menu. Find on gear button clicked event. Go to the end of it and call set current options for inventory component. Make new key value pair. For key, enter weapon slot. For value, pass equipment slot from the event. But pay attention to not use enum to string function. Instead, we should use enum to name. Additionally, go back to main tab event and add call set current options with empty map. This will make sure current options are cleared when back button is clicked. Now we need to implement set weapon slot function in character base. Now we have equipped weapon functionality exposed to the player. We should remove all weapons that we assign to player blueprint in the editor. Let's see how this will work. As you can see, we cannot click on this buttons right now. This is because button is hidden when slot is empty. Let's fix this. Go to the equipment slot button widget. Remove this set visibility function. This button should be always visible. We can just change its icon when slot is empty. For that purpose, I'm going to add new variable of type texture 2D. For the value, you can use some image. I'm going to use one that I have created using Deep AI Text to Image Generator. Let's try this now. If I try to equip sword, nothing happens. This is because I have forgot to call equip weapons function when weapon in slot is changed. Go to the character base. Find set weapon in slot event. Add call to equip weapons function at the end. Now when I equip sword, it is not visible on the inventory pawn, but when you close game menu, you should see that sword is equipped. Let's fix inventory pawn. To do this, we need to inform somehow inventory pawn that weapon is changed. Go to the equip weapons function in character base. Add new pin to sequence node. Here we will call new event dispatcher. Name it on weapons equipped. Now go to the inventory pawn. We need to bind this new event from the player to the function equip weapons in inventory pawn. This will ensure that inventory pawn is updated every time new weapon is equipped. However, this is not it. We need to notify equipment menu that weapon is equipped. Equipment menu needs this information to refresh its widgets. Go to the inventory component and add new event dispatcher. Name it on item used. It should be called right after call to the function useItem. Now go to the Equipment menu widget. Find OnInitialized event. Add binding to OnItemUsed event. Make new event. Name it OnItemEquipped. Here we need to update all buttons. Additionally, we need to create binding for inventory event on item used in Equipment Grid 2. Here we already have bind events method. We just need to bind on item used event instead. Also, we will need to create another custom event. Let's see what we have now. I will equip sword. And we can see it on inventory pawn. Let's try to equip shield in left hand. And I cannot do it. This is because we need to have some special handling for weapon switch in our inventory component. Go back to inventory component blueprint. Before we call an item use dispatcher, we need to check if this item is weapon and do some processing. Create new function. Name it, handle weapon change. This function should receive inventory item struct as reference. Also, we should pass options parameter to it. We should call function handle weapon change only for weapon items. To check if the item is weapon, we should simply use inventory weapon tag. Let's implement this function now. First, we need to mark this item as equipped. We will do this by adding inventory equipment tag to it. Then we need to update item that was previously equipped in that weapon slot. Leave this for now. At the end, we will use item metadata to store information about weapon slot in which current item is equipped. To find item that is currently equipped in socket, we need to search inventory items by item metadata. Again, this can be done in blueprints, but I would suggest using C++. Go to the Visual Studio. Find RPG Inventory component header. Define new blueprint callable function for searching items by metadata. This function should return an index of the item. The implementation is simple. Iterate through items array and try to find first item that is provided key value pair in metadata attribute. Go back to Unreal Editor and compile code. When compile is done, go to the inventory component. Find Handle Weapon Change function. Add call to the new function we just created. Use it to find item that is equipped in current slot. If there is valid item, update it by removing weapon slot from its metadata. Additionally, remove equip tag from it. Finally, we have everything in place. Let's test it. As you can see, we can equip weapons using Equipment Selection menu. Also, Inventory Pawn is updated to visualize equipped items. One feature you can add to improve user experience is to allow rotation of the inventory pawn. To achieve this, create new event in inventory pawn. Add some float input. Use it to add relative rotation to the mesh component, but only in Z-axis. Then create new input action. Pay attention to select axis 1D for value type, and enable it when game is paused. Then go to in-game menu context and assign some key pair to this action. You should set it like on the video. At the end, go to the inventory component and implement this input action. Use world delta seconds multiplied by some constant rotation rate. Then multiply all by action value from inventory camera input action and send it to the rotate pawn function. Now let's fix some issues from the previous tutorial that you have reported on my Discord server. First one is related to toggling game menu. There is a bug when you enter directly into inventory menu and then press open menu input. You will be stuck in game menu unless you restart the game. First, go to the game menu interface. Add new function. Name it Get Active Menu. Then open game menu widget and implement this new function. You need to compare active menu with each menu widget and return appropriate value. Now go to the RPG Player controller interface. Add function toggle game menu. It should have same definition like open game menu. Go to the RPG Player controller blueprint. First, update toggle menu input action. Instead of flip-flop node, use game menu reference to figure out what action should be done. Then implement toggle menu function from the RPG Player controller interface. Here you should simply check if game menu is valid. If not, call open game menu function. If yes, check for active menu. If active menu is the same like one provided in event call, you should close game menu. If the active menu is different, just set active menu to the one that is provided as an event input. Then go to the inventory component. Replace flip-flop logic with call to toggle menu function. Another bug is related to opening inventory item pop-up in inventory menu. If you are using some bigger resolutions, this is what will happen with pop-up. Thank you Ramos for providing solution to this. You need to apply it in inventory item widget. Additionally, after this tutorial, you have similar pop-up and equipment item. Make sure to update this place too. That wraps up our tutorial on the equipment menu. Now your players can swap weapons and customize their loadout seamlessly. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you don't miss future updates. Huge thanks to my Patreon supporters for making these tutorials possible. See you in the next one.